don't you forget I'm the motherfucking coalition too.
Yeah, we are, and we are one.
Are we? Motherfuckers tried to get you killed.
Man, where you hear that bullshit from?
You didn't think I was gonna find out?
Hardy, don't do it, Jim! Don't do it!
Stop wasting my fucking time and get back to business.
You have no idea who I fucking am! You don't own me.
What's going on, YouTube, man? We back at it again this week with another recap and review of Power Book 404. This week we're on episode 7, and man, this episode right here was 10 out of 10. From the start to finish, we've seen a lot of relationships broken, and we've seen a lot of people that had to adjust to relationships being broken. If y'all like the video that I'm pushing out, we're here. Like, comment, subscribe for more power content. Let's get into it. So coming over here to Stacy Mars, we know she is fucking hallucinating and having a bad nightmare for everything that's going on with the whole Claudia shit. So, you know, we should have known from this point on right here that her days was definitely going to be numbered, because she was very, very emotional this episode. And we should have just known that once you're emotional and power, bro, you're done. Now, as we come over here to Tommy and Shanti, we know they're talking about Elise's mom and, you know, her, you know, them getting control of the whole club, because we know Elise left this whole shit show like, you know, 2 days ago. So they now have access to the club with Elise's mom. And, you know, they're just chopping it up. And, you know, Tommy gets a text message from Diamond, you know, it's a coalition meet in 15 minutes. And he also gets a text from Peter, one of the Albanians that Tommy had gave his restaurant to, you know, about the whole robbery that was happening last episode with Vic and his crew. Now, as we come over here to Peter and Tommy, Peter is telling Tommy about, you know, like, we got a couple friends that you know, not happy with the deal that we made, and you gave us some shit that is technically wasn't even yours. And Peter was just telling Tommy, like, look, if you want our business to stay together and you want to work together, bro, you got to find out who did this shit, because it was a fucking bloodbath and I lost like 3 men. So you got to get to the bottom of this, because you gave me those bars. Coming over here to Stacy Mars, we know that she's having a whole campaign run, and she's having a speech for everything in the arrest last episode when she arrested one of the Marquez cartel members. And she's just saying, like, you know, look, this arrest sends a clear message to the Estrada cartel and the Marquez cartel that, you know, we won't stop to take down, you know, drug dealers. And Stacy is asked by a reporter, you know, like, what events led up to this arrest? And we already know that Stacy Marks will have to lie again, but, you know, we don't actually see that scene. But in the episode, you know, Tommy did end up watching the press conference, and, you know, Stacy Marks did end up lying again. So as we coming over here to the next scene with Tommy, Diamond, and Jannard, we know that, you know, Tommy was late to the coalition because he had to go meet up with Peter. And Diamond is telling Tommy, like, look, basically, like, we had a unanimous decision in CBI. And we know Tommy not really fucking with that because he didn't want to move that shit to begin with. But, you know, he played it cool at first, you know. So Raheem ended up telling Jannard, like, you know, Shanti not gonna fuck with this whole fentanyl shit. So Jannard ended up telling him, like, look, when she learned we making money off this shit, she gonna get on board. And we know Tommy overheard this shit as everybody was leaving. So we know Tommy will be using this against Jannard later on in the episode. So coming over here to Miguel and that same princess, you know, we got Miguel hyping his whole crew, you know, talking about the Marquez and how they coming after him, and everybody need to be strapped up and be prepared for this shit. And it was just one dude in there that was just talking and then asking them questions, you know, kept questioning Miguel. I'm like, man, there's something fishy about that dude. Cause like, why he keep questioning him if the boss is telling him, you know, that war is coming? You know, that's just not like a, you know, a lieutenant to question the boss when he's giving orders. And Miguel ended up telling Cruz, like, look, don't worry about me. You go look after my sister. And we all know that Ortega will be going after Maria in next week's episode. So coming over here to Tommy, Diamond, and Jannard, we got this nigga Jannard over in the corner laughing and smirking when, you know, Tommy had asked, you know, are we one? And Tommy definitely knew some fishy shit was going on. So, you know, Tommy backed off the argument. He said, you know, if it not fuck it, you know, like, we gonna sell this shit. You know, a deal is a deal, man. Hey, like, you got it. So now Tommy ended up telling Diamond, you know, like, Peter ended up hitting me up, and, you know, they had like a little situation at the bar, and Tommy knew that, you know, he thought in his head that Vic had did the shit. So Diamond looked at this shit like, you know, essentially that this was a problem. So Tommy had Jannard go to Vic's penthouse. Diamond ended up saying, like, yeah, it'd be suspicious if me or Tommy went, so it'd be better if you go to get information out of him. Before Jannard leaves, Tommy ended up giving Jannard 2 addresses, and one of those addresses is Ray's address, and we do know that Tommy does know about Ray. So coming over here to Jannard as he walks into Vic's place, basically telling Vic, like, look, Tommy already know what you did to the Albanians at the bar, and basically, like, look, man, if I don't get information out, y'all supposed to go to these addresses right here. And one of those addresses is the address to Ray's house. And Jannard is basically kicking game to Vic, like, look, if you get a body, get this shit out the way, you gonna have Tommy off your back. This is me helping you. And he ended up telling Vic, like, look, you owe me for this shit. And we already know that boy Vic definitely came up with a plan and executed that plan, even though I feel like, in my opinion, he really didn't have to, based off of Tommy's reaction later on in the episode. So as we come over here to Tommy and Shanti, we know Tommy ended up telling Shanti about the whole fentanyl deal that Diamond and Jannard did behind essentially both of their backs. And we know Shanti was mad as fuck about this shit because she told Jannard earlier in the season that she wasn't fucking with that fentanyl shit. And she ended up exposing that Jannard was a fucking junkie. And that Diamond was the motherfucker that told me to help the nigga, get off of the shit. So now Tommy is looking at this as, another thing that Diamond is hiding from him. So coming over here to say he got pulled up on by the lawyer of Ortega, and they was wondering how the fuck they didn't tell them about the whole fucking arresting of Ortega's cousin. And Shane said, look, I think Stacy Marks is compromised. I gotta get to the bottom of it and figure out what it is. And he ended up telling Shane, like, yeah, you do that, because if you don't, your fucking life gonna depend on it. So Tommy ended up pulling up on Stacy Marks, letting her know, like, look, every case that I got, I'm gonna end up giving to you. Stacy Marks wasn't fucking with that shit. She told Tommy the one thing that she did was only a one-time thing. And you already know the shit that Tommy has on her, so she essentially has to play ball. And Tommy, ended up saying, like, that shit sounds good. You really don't have a choice. So Stacy Marks has been catching L's the whole goddamn season, bro. And we already know what's gonna happen to her ass later on in this episode. So coming over here to JP and Dmac, they just chopping it up about everything that was just transpired between them and just their whole relationship. And JP was telling Dmac about, when JP told his father, when he came out, about how disappointed his father was. And he ended up flipping it onto Dmac and saying, like, look, we almost going through that same type of parallel with you being inside of the streets. And I just want you to know that, like, I accept you for who you are and everything that you do, and I'll always be here for you. And I feel like this is damn near like a send-off of JP, bro. I feel like, bro, next episode, he gonna be up out of here, bro. I feel like Jannard gonna be the one to do it too, man. And I just feel like this whole episode was like damn near like a goodbye to JP, because this is the most we seen him for the whole entire season, man. So we're gonna have to see on next week's episode. Coming over to the hitman that Ortega had hired to take out Tommy, we now know that he's giving him another task, and that's to take out Miguel. And the dude is saying, like, look, I'm gonna need more money for this shit, because that's a high mark to try to reach. And Ortega said that's not a problem, but just letting FYI, the last person that tried to take out Miguel, he ended up getting killed. Now coming over here to Diamond, man, he's talking to the correctional officer that he had on the inside that he was sleeping with in the last season. And he's basically telling her, like, look, I'm gonna be moving this fentanyl through the jails. And she telling him, like, yeah, I don't know if I can do that shit. That fentanyl shit gonna cause, a lot of traction to what y'all got going on. It's gonna cause a lot of attention. And Diamond wasn't really trying to hear none of that shit. He got the dog on her and just tell her, like, look, hey, you just do what the fuck I do, and you just move that shit and make sure that shit happens. So that boy Diamond, he on a whole different motherfucking time, and this nigga moving totally different, bruh. Now, as you come over here to Stacy Marks and saying, saying is not too convinced on the whole Marquez cartel being behind the hit of Claudia. He knows that Stacy Marks is behind something, but Stacy Marks is keeping everything, tight and close. She's not giving up on information, and she's essentially telling, like, look, we should be happy that we got the victory, like, we got arrested and all type of shit. So, like, what's the problem? And we all know Shane wasn't trying to hear none of the shit that she was talking about, and he had ended up walking out saying that he's not convinced. So coming over here to Jannard and Tommy, we got Tommy handing Jannard a bag and basically telling Jannard, like, look, go hand this to Shanti at the Viagra Triangle. She's basically waiting on you. And Jannard not really fucking with that shit. He telling Tommy, like, look, I'm not your errand boy. I'm not gonna keep, like, doing shit that you want me to do. Tommy just got the dog on him saying, like, look, we accepted you back in CBI, all the grimy shit that you did, so I know you trying to get to the, get in Diamond's head, but you gonna have to go through me first and doing any of that shit. And the nigga Jannard, like, look, I'm gonna have to just go through you then. And he ended up picking up that bag, walking out, and telling Tommy, like, look, I can't wait to kill your ass. Coming over here to Vic and Connor, they're just having a drink and bullshitting and talking. And we know Vic just looking at his friend like, man, like, he looking at him in a fishy way, because we know he gonna have to put him down and essentially frame this on fucking Connor for everything that happened with the whole bar situation last episode. So he ended up telling his friend, like, look, just go look at the view while I go do something. His friend ended up turning around and he ended up putting two right in his back. So coming over here to Stacy Marks and Maria, Stacy Marks had ended up putting up on Maria, questioning her about everything that happened with Claudia, because she felt that she knew some information that she didn't. And in reality, we already know that Stacy Marks knows everything. Stacy Marks felt that Maria, could help with her in the whole investigation. Maria wasn't really fucking with it, and she seen the baby clothes sitting over there, and Stacy Marks had told Maria, like, do you really want to, like, raise a kid with a murderer? And Maria, she kind of went off on her and told her to get the fuck out the house and all this and that. And Stacy Marks was just telling her, like, look, like, you can do the right thing here. And we all know this is just Stacy Marks trying to get in Maria's head. So coming over here to the boy Jannard, he had the Viagra Triangle, and he trying to, get a bag to Shanti, and he's still trying to talk to her. He calling her, texting her. She not answering the phone because she's still not fucking with this nigga. And you know, as that's going on, the shorty, you know, walk up to him and asking him, you know, like, you trying to have a good time type shit. And you know, Jannard was kind of hesitant at first, but he ended up declining this shit. And she also pulled out, you know, some product, you know, some blow, whatever the case is. And you know, Jannard was still looking a little tempted, but he like, nah, I'm cool. You know, as much as that, as tempting as that sounds, I'm good. Now, coming over here to Vic and Tommy, we know they're talking about the whole shit that happened with the bar. You know, Vic got a body, which is his friend Colin that he had ended up taking out. He ended up showing the body to Tommy, and he said, you know, I don't really give a fuck who did it. Just make sure your boys is in line, because one more fuck up, and you know, it's over for you, my nigga. Like, basically, that's what Tommy is saying to Victor. Then coming back over to this nigga Jannard, and the other couple scenes that we just saw, bro, I'm thinking in my head like, man, he on a whole new type of time. He got a girl, he ain't fucking with the drugs no more. Lo and behold, 2 scenes later, this nigga is dominating cheeks. This nigga's dominating cheeks 2 scenes later, y'all. So, you know, Shanti ended up catching this nigga Jannard, you know, like, in mid-action. You know, she telling this nigga, like, man, you know, you ungrateful as fuck, you ain't shit. After all I did for you, building you from the ground back up, and this is the fucking things that you do to me, my nigga. And, you know, the boy Jannard ended up going the fuck off. You know, this nigga, you know, he fucking coked out of his mind, bro. And, you know, he just talking this shit because he's tired of Shanti talking down on him. He basically telling her, like, look, bitch, I'm a fucking boss. You ain't gonna keep telling me what the fuck you do. You work for me. That's what the fuck you need to understand about this shit. You work for me. We ain't equals. We ain't none of that shit. And that nigga Jannard ended up telling her, like, you too much any fucking way. Like, fuck you. And Shanti ended up hitting that nigga with a counter, like, yeah, nigga, you ain't enough. And she ended up walking out on that nigga. And coming over to the next scene right here, man, we got her smashing this nigga motherfucking Lambo, boy. Hey, and I know it's a lot of niggas out here who could relate to shit like this, who done cheated on a female and got their motherfucking car fucking just absolutely wrecked. So now that we know that the girl that Jannard hooked up with, her name is Jade, and she was sent by Tommy because he set this whole shit up because he knew this nigga Jannard was an addict and he wasn't gonna resist, you know, that fucking product. So it's like, man, this nigga Tommy is playing chess and not checkers, bro. So just briefly going over this scene right here, we got JP, Genesis, and Dmac. You know, they all just chopping it up, eating dinner. And, you know, Genesis had ended up telling JP that, you know, Dmac had a 1400 on the SATs, that I think it was. And, you know, JP's obviously excited about that. And Genesis also said that, you know, Dmac also talks about you in a lot, you know, in a positive way. And we do know JP ended up telling Dmac, like, you know, you should definitely think about that Spellman shit. Because, you know, in Atlanta, you know, that's a good opportunity. So could this possibly be them foreshadowing where the next spinoff could possibly be? So now we got Stacy over here talking to her ex-husband, and she's telling him, like, look, I've compromised myself. And she didn't say it was Tommy Egan, but, you know, he started naming out names, and she didn't say anything. You can just see look on her face that it was definitely Tommy Egan if you was in Bobby's perspective. So as Bobby is hearing this information, you know, man, he's just thinking like, man, oh, like, holy fuck, like, what the fuck have you got yourself into? So Stacy ended up telling Bobby, like, you know, look, like, you know, I made this problem, you know, I'm cleaning the mess up myself, you know, don't worry about it, I'm gonna handle this. As soon as Stacy Marks uttered that shit out of her mouth, I said, yeah, GG, she's not making it a power legacy, she's done for. So just briefly coming to this scene right here, first look at Kate this season, you know, she's talking to Dmac, and we all know that Dmac has apologized for everything that he said last season to his grandmother, and we all know that Kate's accepting it, and she's just trying to find herself and, you know, get herself right. So it was good to see Kate this episode. Coming over here to Miguel, we can see that he's being attacked by 2 of the Marquez cartel members. One is choking him out and one has a knife in front of him. So Buddy with the knife ended up stabbing another one of the Marquez cartel members, and he had essentially killed him. So the dude with the knife ended up running away. So now Miguel has knowledge that, you know, this Marquez cartel shit is real and is at his fucking doorstep, because this is the first hit that has been attempted on Miguel. Coming over here to Tommy and Shanti. Tommy ended up going to Shanti's boxing gym, and, you know, Shanti ended up spilling the whole beans about everything. And he told Tommy, like, look, you know, Diamond and Jannard had tried to have your nephew off. So Shanti ended up telling Tommy, like, yeah, look, the whole shit that they said that when Dmac had hit for a Crabs game, well, yeah, they lied about that. Yeah, actually, we'll try to go hit the 9-7s. And they set that whole thing up, you know, for Dmac, you know, to get killed. And we already know Tommy just ended up storming out there. We already know what's gonna happen next. We got fucking Diamond versus Tommy, dog. This was cooking the whole goddamn season, bro. This was in the works the whole season. As this is going on, you know, the boy Tommy ended up, you know, calling Diamond a liar, this and that. And, you know, basically just saying, like, you know, this whole coalition shit won't be shit without me. And, you know, that boy Diamond and that motherfucking yelling on some goddamn King Kong shit like, motherfucker, you out, you out. So we gonna have to see what's gonna transpire in this next week's episode, because, man, it's Tommy kicked out of CBI. Then this nigga Diamond put my nigga Tommy through a motherfucking table on some Hardy Boys Dudley Boys, Asian Christian shit. So coming over here to Ortega, he ended up getting a call from the hitman, with the whole failed attempt. And he ended up telling Ortega, like, look, Tommy is, fucking Miguel's sister. We can use that. We can go after her. Ortega instantly thought in his head, like, yeah, this motherfucker Tommy, took out my uncle. So take out her and take out the baby. And I'm thinking in my head, like, yeah, the Egan's and the Garcias are going through it right now. Now, coming to the last scene of the episode, man, we got Stacy Marks meeting up with Tommy Egan and basically telling him, like, look, I'm tired of working for you and I'm tired of doing all this dirt. I'm not doing this shit no more. And, she's telling Tommy that, look, I got people in higher places. I can just put in a few calls. I may not be married, but, I can get out of this shit right here. And, Tommy don't want to hear none of that shit. He's like, yeah, that ain't really going to work for me. So you just get back to business and just do what the fuck I say. So Stacy is gonna pull her gun out and, arrest Tommy Egan. This nigga end up shooting her. And I'm like, man, what the fuck? And then he end up walking over again and end up putting one in her chest. And I'm like, man, this nigga Tommy is this nigga tweaking, bruh. I'm like, this nigga is really tweaking, bruh. So, man, we're gonna have to see what the fuck gonna unfold in next week's episode, bro. These last 3 episodes that we got, we got great shit in store, man. So if y'all like the content that I'm pushing out here, man, like, comment, subscribe, click on the other videos that you see on the screen. I'm Los and I'm signing out.